Alrighty, in the interest of getting things started, since I know we're at opposite ends of our days, I'm gonna take the lead and get us rolling. So the first topic is the one I put up, which is surrounding default roles. Currently, we essentially only have admin and space developer as realistic representations of roles. And we should probably think about fleshing those out to be more appropriate, to be maybe more aligned with the Cloud Foundry VM's experience. So towards that, I'm going to probably create a bunch of little piecemeal stories to update the roles, and I'll try to have those cataloged and then blast them into the Korifi dev Slack, or whoever wants to take a look. Since they aren't overly technically complex, we might be able to get people to work on them that might otherwise not be submitting. Maybe not. We'll find out. But anyway, anyone else have thoughts about the default roles? I know it's relatively straightforward.
It'd be tricky to test in a way. Like you have to.
Yep.
I don't know if we want to, if and how we want to test them. Maybe just manually. I don't know. But yeah, we need some kind of process to double check them as we.
Yeah,
because it's easy to get things wrong or to leave things out or to accidentally give extra privileges or stuff like that.
Yep.
I don't know how we prevent that from happening.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think we should definitely focus on like making the stories very small to say restrict like one role and like evaluate the permissions for each role rather than just doing everything in a broad sweeping pass, because I'm sure there will be issues with the existing end-to-end tests and whatnot, since they kind of use whatever role has the permissions they need. But yeah, that's a good point. I'll put some thought into how we might make sure we're a little bit careful on that. But I welcome any other thoughts if anyone wants to post in the Slack channel or DM me or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think it's going to be more expensive than we might think it is. So like I think maybe we should target, like, pick some of the roles that we think are most valuable and do those first. Because like Giuseppe is saying, if we test this adequately, we're gonna find a lot of things, and it's gonna be like I guess this is reminding me basically of when we try to rewrite the role implementation in Cloud Controller to use the Perm service. And while doing that, we found the lack of existing tests and definition of what these roles should do actually made it have a huge like exploratory burden on each endpoint and each role we were touching. So like I think we won't hit that to the same extent because it's like a smaller and less legacy code base, but we're still gonna like bump into things like that. So I think it would make sense to like pick one, like a glaring omission, like org manager or something, and start from there.
Good point. Cool. Sounds good. All right. All good points. Thank you. Final thoughts on that? Or rather, final thoughts for now. Obviously, once I create some stories, we can be a little bit more detailed in it. Cool. Well, I guess I'm going to pass it on to Giuseppe now. Branch protection PR.
Yes, we discussed this, I think, last time we were thinking about. So basically what happened is we used to have some branch protection rules which were just manually set. on our branches from the GitHub UI, and then the automation that we get, the repository automation that we get via the community repository also includes adding default branch protection rules if you just flip a flag to true. So we were like, okay, let's do that. Let's try that. We did that, which overwrote our existing rules. But then I think we kind of preferred the previous rules that were a bit stricter. So we asked around, and apparently there is a way in the community repository YAML to override the rules that you get by default. And you can be very specific in which rules do you want. So get exactly the rules that you want, but automated instead of being like, and persisted in YAML, in the YAML in that repository, instead of just being, just set manually and very easy to lose accidentally. So that's good. I created a PR to do exactly that. But honestly, I don't remember exactly what the settings were before I turned on automation. I didn't think of screenshotting them or something. So now there has been some discussion on that PR about, for example, or should we allow the bots group to override certain limitations and stuff like that. I just wanted to raise this with everyone in case anyone had opinions / memories of how we used to do it. I'm pretty sure we didn't have that because like leads are part of the bots group, and I never saw any way to override, to merge PRs by skipping checks or stuff. So I'm pretty sure we didn't have them. It doesn't mean it's a bad idea to put them in now. I just wanted to hear from everyone about this because I'm not sure we should do it or not. It's probably fine either way. Once we agree on that, I think another point they raised is the syntax we used. They suggest a syntax, but given their syntax maps one-to-one to the GitHub syntax because the tool just is just making requests to GitHub, they adopted pretty much the same syntax of the GitHub JSON. And reading the GitHub docs, I saw that the field that they document is actually deprecated. I used the new field that GitHub recommends, but now I'm being told on this side that the syntax is not correct. But the checks on the PR are passing. So I don't know. I might have to basically rework the PR using the old deprecated syntax if it's the only one that they support on the automation tool. It's called Prow or something. So yeah, basically a couple of things to solve on that PR. Keep an eye on it. See if there is anything you want to add. Otherwise, yeah, I guess it will get in eventually, and we'll get best of both worlds. We get the branch protection rules we want, but applied by the community automation instead of being applied manually by ourselves.
Got it. Yeah, it's definitely better to have it committed somewhere rather than just sort of configuration that's hidden in GitHub. So
yeah, and the tool they use is really interesting. It comes from the Kubernetes community. It's really powerful. It can pretty much do anything via YAML config. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Cool. Well, let us know if we can do anything to help. But it's probably going to be mostly a just sort of fiddly tweaky sort of thing to get it just right. Cool. Anyone else? All right, moving us along so we can give some time back. Final topic that I see is why can't Korifi default to list all build packs available from Paketo? Ron, any thoughts on that, or do you want me to just sort of muse on it?
Yeah, the background is this conversation that was started by Sylvan So Silvan is one of the contract writers for the foundation, and he was trying to push a Python app, which unfortunately did not push on the first try. And then a little bit of investigation. And thank you, Tim, for helping narrow down the issue. We found out that by default, Korifi does not have Python listed as a build pack inside the cluster builder. I don't see a reason why that should be the case. Could we not just list out all of the build packs and support that we have for apps to be built or languages and frameworks that Paketo supports?
Yeah, I guess the only trade-off would be size of the builder image, maybe time necessary to build that builder image when you install Korifi. Maybe it will take a little bit longer. But also, yeah, I guess the list we have now is kind of arbitrary. There's no reason Python should be out. It's probably the second most used language in the world or something. I don't know how we came up with that list, but Python should probably be in the list. I don't know if we want to put all of the Paketo build packs, but Python definitely belongs there. I don't know how CF ships. Maybe we could look at that and try to replicate that, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what CF ships though is different because it's not like, I mean, they all get downloaded to Diego, but it's not like you have a giant builder image being produced out of all of them. So it's like it's a little cheaper, I think, to add a ton to CF.
So if we had to reproduce that list, it might be too expensive. That's what you're saying.
And they don't all exist, like R or whatever. But
yeah, but even only the ones that exist.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a trade-off for like what do people like. I think my understanding is what we ship in the Helm chart kind of just organically evolves from what we were using in our test environments, which is why it has like that subset. But like, I don't know, it feels reasonable to add more, I guess. But Eric listed.
Yeah, so it's static, Java, Ruby, .NET, Node, Go, Python, PHP, Nginx, R, and binary. Binary and static, not the same?
No, static file is like, you can push a bunch of static assets in this static file, metadata file, and it'll like cram an
It's just the
Nginx
web
in
server.
It's a tuned Nginx, I think.
Yeah, so static and Nginx are almost the same thing. Okay.
Yeah, I think like, between that, those two, there's been some reconfiguration in the universe of Paketo build packs. And similarly, like the proc file build pack is really the closest thing to the binary build pack.
Okay. Yeah, so we could, I don't know which ones we have at the moment. I guess I can find that list relatively easily. Somewhere in the Helm chart, right? Because then, yeah, the Helm chart actually creates the default builder if you want to, but that's it. Like, we don't really, in the instructions we say, if you want, we create a builder for you, otherwise we won't. Yeah, so we have Java, Node, Ruby, Procfile, Go. We're not too far, right? We're missing .NET. Does it make sense to have .NET given we've never tested on Windows?
That's core.
.NET Core.
It should work on Linux.
So maybe we can think about .NET.
That's probably
Python,
big
PHP.
one,
if there are Paketo, because the other thing is I don't know exactly what's the list of official Paketo build packs.
There's definitely I think we should definitely have Python and PHP. They're common kick the tire languages too. Like people would want to push those.
Yeah, I mean, if it's just two or three extra build packs, the impact maybe is not unsustainable.
Would it make sense to surface this in the Helm chart?
It's hard. Like I think if you look at that, like you could naively surface it if we keep it a flat list of groups with a single member per group. But I'm wondering what that configuration interface would look like if you actually want to layer multiple build packs in a group. Because
Which
like
is not a thing with legacy build packs.
yeah, it's not a thing with legacy build packs, but it's something people in practice want to do. Like I hacked it up in one of our CI environments to inject a chmod build pack in that Ruby group, for example. But like I think once you start getting to that point though, like that's where we should encourage people to provide their own builder.
Yeah, exactly.
break-
Any of
break
those
glass and make
customizations
your own
can be
builder.
done.
Yeah. Like so maybe you could do like the most basic config, like Julian's suggesting, where you could take a list of things. I just don't know what Helm allows you to do. Because it's like string templating, right?
Yeah, but it definitely has lists. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
it has lists, which
These are-
you can loop over or stuff. And maybe we put the list in the values file. So that we take the current list, we put it in the values file as the default value.
Okay.
Then people can add stuff or take stuff out.
Yeah.
Because there is already, I think, some flag about, create default builder or something, which people can turn off if they want to provide their own. I think we document all of that. But like at the same time, like one thing is, oh, I want to make like a very sophisticated build pack with groups and stuff. Then yeah, you can provide your own. But if they just want Python or I don't know, Scala or whatever, we should make it easier. Like most people would just be happy with this flat list, I think. So I think it makes sense to surface it into the Helm chart as a list value, and people can add or remove, and also change the default. Maybe add a couple of super popular ones like Python, PHP. The problem is if you go on the Paketo Buildpacks GitHub, there's plenty of build packs because like the actual ones, the real ones are meta build packs, right? There's no way to list to filter out like the actual top level ones from the tiny ones. Because it would be nice to have a list of the main supported one, like even on their website. I don't know if they have it.
Feel like I've seen it, but
If you can find it, that would be nice. Because even Scala, like maybe we can drag it in. I don't know, again, like maybe do some experiments, see how big it gets. Because I guess it depends on the individual build packs. So like some might be tiny, some might be huge.
Yeah, like Java's a big one. I don't actually know the size of .NET Core, but I relate it to Java in my mind, so it could also be a big one. Like, but I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we add a story or something in the back.
I think if we added Python and PHP and then made it configurable in the Helm chart, then it's easy enough.
Yeah, that would be a great improvement already, because we already have a few very popular ones, right? So
Yeah, this all makes sense to me. And yes, if people want very complex builder setups, then they can definitely make their own builder.
yeah, it's not that hard. It's just if you can just change some values in the Helm chart instead, it's easier.
Yep.
Or they can just do things like what I dropped in Zoom chat. Chain together some JQs and make a nasty looking thing like that.
This is how you managed to.
This is how I got post facto working on acceptance.
That's very impressive. Yeah. So or equal pipe equals is the concatenation, I guess. Oh.
Well,
Nice.
the plus dot, I think I don't know. I was relying on Stack Overflow a lot, so
Yeah, no, JQ
and a JQ playground.
Yeah, nice.
Quick's fun.
Yeah. Well, anyway, point is a Helm chart allowing some of that would be better than this.
Cool. All right, so sounds like it's reasonable to add it into the Helm chart as a flat list, nothing complex. and adding the .NET Core, Python, and PHP build packs, and it should be relatively simple to run a quick sort of back of the napkin build to check if it vastly increases the size of the builder.
Mhm.
So, cool. All right. Any more thoughts before we move on to what appears to be the new final topic? Going once, going twice. All right. Another one from Ron. Looks like we have the release notes, and we want to see if there's anything of note, of significance. Looking at some links being added in.
Is there anything in the release notes that is particularly unclear or like
No,
they need
not
new thing?
unclear. I think it's pretty straightforward what is there.
Mhm.
I just thought we could talk through some of these so that I get a little bit of a better understanding, and so I can communicate this better to the world. So let's start at the beginning. So the first one says something makes app pushes much faster. And so something being a single kpack.image per app. So could you give some details about what the exact changes, and is it just the build caching feature of kpack that is causing this change? And so is this like a kpack thing that was recently released, or are we just taking advantage of it?
It's just a feature of kpack that we were not leveraging before, because
Okay.
kpack, when used standalone, is supposed to be used with this image object where like you create an image and you assign sources to it basically, and when you push new sources, the image notices and rebuilds, right?
Yeah.
But in CF, we don't really use it. In Korifi, we don't really use it that way, of course, because we control the source push. So instead, at the beginning, we just created one of those kpack images per push, which means kpack was always keeping like a volume with build cache in it, but it would be unused because every time we pushed, a new image will be created with a fresh empty cache. Now we figured a way to have one long-lived kpack image per app, which means when we do subsequent pushes of the same app, we use the same kpack.image, and this results in this cache volume being reused across these pushes. And what we noticed experimentally, like just playing locally, is that if you push, like if you push an app twice, the second push is almost instant. Like we're talking about a handful of seconds. Even faster than it looks like the kpack cache is basically better than the CF for VMs cache. So actually, we're even faster than CF for VMs, because like I guess it leverages the fact that we are not dealing with droplets and tarbos, but we're dealing with container layers to be a more effective, basically, at caching. So it's not something that the user should notice, but except for like pushes should be faster when it's an app that you've already pushed the first time. Basically, any push after the first push should be faster. That's the idea.
I think an operator might notice though that it's also more efficient in terms of cluster resources, because we're not going to have like 5 2 GB volumes hanging around per app anymore.
Right.
It's now just a single one. So
nice. I think that's very useful to know. Thanks.
Then Buildpack selection. So
does this kind of relate
VMs,
to the discussion that we were having just before?
Kind of. So in CF, you have in CF for VMs, you have a full, you have a complete management lifecycle management for Buildpacks. You can add Buildpacks from the internet. You can just say, hey, CF, add this Buildpack to your list.
Yeah.
And then when you push, you can use it. In Korifi, we still don't have that. But at least we wanted people to be able to say, of the build packs that you have in your list, which is immutable at the moment, can I just use one? Because that will save me going through the detection phase every time. Because like basically the app sources go through the detection for every build pack until one matches. And that takes time. And if you already know which build pack you want, there's no reason to go through that every time you push. So now we allow people to specify the build packs that they want, either in the manifest or with -b in the CLI. And basically Korifi will create a temporary cluster builder for KPack that only contains the build pack that you selected, and that will make the detection phase instantaneous, basically. Because you're going, so that's something that I think the SAP, yeah. Also, like this is part of the work that the SAP people did about like trying to integrate with their internal structure, which kind of puts a lot more pressure on our API compatibility. Like it tries to use many features of the API that we didn't have. So it kind of uncovered lots of holes we had in support. So we kind of plug in all of those. This was one of these. They tried to use they tried to specify build packs they couldn't. Now they can.
Okay.
Cool. It's still not, again, it's still not the end of the story. We will have eventually to allow people to push their own build packs, which would have solved, I guess, your problem with Python. You could have done a CF, I guess, create build pack or add build pack or something with the URL. And technically we could have used it, but we still don't have all of that. So that still needs to be implemented. So labels for user provided services is a bit of a tricky one. If I understand it correctly, in CF for VMs, managed services have labels, right? Which are used by frameworks, for example, to detect which binding they want to use when starting up. And user provided services usually don't have labels. Like they only have one label, which is like user-provided. But this means that you cannot use a user provided service to pretend to be a managed service. Your user provided service will always be clearly labeled as user provided. But given Korifi still doesn't support managed services, we want to allow users to pretend to have managed services by creating user provided services which look like managed services. So at least they can push these apps using these frameworks that rely on these labels, right? So this goes beyond what CF for VMs does. In fact, we allow people more flexibility because at the moment we don't have managed services, and this is the only workaround they have. If they want to use these frameworks, the only option they have is user provided services. We want for them to be at least able to, trick these frameworks into using their bindings, even though they were not created with managed services, but they were created with manually created user provided services. So rolling strategy basically is a feature of the CF API that allows you to push an app and get it basically deployed in a rolling fashion.
Yeah.
So that instances get replaced one at a time.
In like the CF for VMs world, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. We just implemented the same endpoint that CF implements. We implemented it. And we did it by leveraging Kubernetes' capabilities, which are native. So now when you do a push or restart or restage with this strategy rolling, it will work. The only problem is, I don't remember exactly why, but we couldn't make existing stateful sets, like existing pushed apps, immediately support this strategy, right? They need to be at least restaged, I think, once, or restarted, I think, at least once. And like, so we pondered, what do we do? Like if someone tries to use the rolling strategy for an app that hasn't been restarted yet, like what do we do? Do we do a non-rolling restart without telling the user? Do we fail? I think at the end we settled with, I think, a failure. So if you try to, I think, use the rolling strategy on an app that hasn't been restarted yet since you upgraded Korifi, you get an error that tells you have to restart the app. before you can use the rolling strategy on it, which is not ideal, but unfortunately we couldn't find a more, like a less invasive, a less smooth path of upgrading. If you installed Korifi from scratch, you don't have this problem. You have this problem if you have a Korifi running with apps and you upgrade Korifi and your old apps are still around.
Got it.
And as part of this, we are now annotating the objects that Korifi creates with a version of Korifi that created them. This allows us to apply, even in the future, we'll be able to apply all sorts of conditional logic based on, you know, the Korifi version, because we will know exactly which version of Korifi was used to create / update that resource for the last time. Right? So for apps, when they get restarted, they get the new label, and we're like, okay, now we know this supports rolling. We can make it roll. But like so here in the notes, I said, yeah, I explained this, that you have to CF restart first, but technically you shouldn't need to read the release notes. If you try to do a CF start / rolling, you should restart / rolling, you should get a good enough error message, I guess, which tells you to restart first.
Got it.
Get default domain is just one of the standard endpoints that CF supports, and it's like it will tell you what's the default domain for a specific org. This is because CF for VMs has global domains, but also has org scoped domains. We don't have org scoped domains yet, so we will just give you the default domain for the system, I think, like the global one.
Got it. But
you still do the request for a specific org. You just get the same response regardless of the org, I believe. What else? Jobs is, I guess, one of the biggest things that we implemented. It's a way to tell any API client, really, to keep any client up to date with some long-running operations. So this is how the CF API does async stuff. When you perform an operation that is supposed to take long, the CF API doesn't block. Instead, it redirects you to this job resource, which you can poll to know what's going on, basically. And the operations that support this flow are mostly deletions, plus the manifest application operation also has this. And in Korifi, implementing this was a bit tricky because we didn't implement this, like, let's say, in the traditional proper way, and instead we kind of took a shortcut, which means we can only support jobs for deletions at the moment. So for manifest application, when you apply manifest, it will still return immediately, even though the manifest application hasn't finished. But for deletions, previously we used to just return immediately. Now we don't. Now we redirect to a job that will be marked as, you know, in progress until the deletion is actually finished. Which means now if you delete an org, for example, the CFCLI, which polls these jobs, will wait until the org is actually gone. While until now we've just returned immediately. So even though the deletion was still carrying on in the background. And yeah, we implemented this for all deletions. So I think it's org spaces, roles, domains, and roots, I think.
Okay.
Then support for updating the app name, lifecycle data, Buildpacks, lifecycle data stack. Again, just previously you just wouldn't be able to update those fields of the app resource. Now you can.
Okay.
And then we've added a bunch of config options. So builder readiness timeout. You can configure how much time you want to wait before failing for the builder to be ready. So the builder is the thing we just discussed about. The builder is this KPack resource that incorporates the list of Buildpacks, and like that thing takes some time to be ready, because basically the first time KPack creates a container image from scratch and pushes it, and that can take time. We had a hard-coded, I think, timeout until we marked it as failed or something. Now you can configure that timeout so that if your custom Buildpack is particularly slow to come up, you can bump that timeout, I guess.
Okay.
Staging requirements, build cache MB. You can configure the cache, the size of the build cache. This is because I think we had issues where like some apps required a bigger cache because, you know, for example, Java
Okay.
apps usually so you can configure the size of the build cache and we will create the cache of that size. You can also change this for existing, like for apps that you've already pushed once, and we will detect it and recreate the cache volume, because technically the cache volume is not resizable. But if you try to resize it, we will delete it and recreate it for you. And then container registry. Oh, there's a typo here. Damn. Let me fix it. Container registry secret names. This used to be, I think, just a single secret name, and now we turned it into a list because you might want to use more than one secret, I guess, for your container registries, and we'll go through the secrets in sequence, I assume, until we find one that works.
Okay.
Finally, so Behan from the TOC had tried to install Korifi on kind using the instructions, and he found a couple of big mistakes, which had been there for a while. We fixed those, so now the instructions should be accurate. That said, this kind of made us reconsider potentially releasing some sort of automation for kind. We had lots of back and forth about how we should deliver it. Like, should it be a script? Should it be a binary? Should it be a Docker image? Whatever. All of these have pros and cons, and we haven't really discussed it in the wild, but it's something that I guess we should reconsider, because in the end, like before to release 0.8, I asked Georgi to take care of it, and usually what we do is we pre-release, try the tarball locally on kind, and if the installation works, it means the install instructions are correct, and then we release. And even Georgi got stuck because he made a mistake because like, I don't know, he misread some instructions. So this is to say that even people who've been on the team since, you know, literally day one, they can still sometimes make mistakes following the instructions, because maybe you skip a step accidentally, or you forget something, you know. Even if the instructions are not wrong per se, it's clearly not an ideal experience. So we should think about something, in my opinion. I don't know what exactly, but something for kind, because like having a universal installer is not an option, in my opinion, but like given kind is a much more controlled environment, I think we should be able to ship something. We already have a script, the infamous deploy on kind, but I'm nervous about shipping shell scripts because literally everyone is running a different version of the shell, and like Max ship very, very old bash, for example. We run ZSH on our machines, like trying to, and like Max have different version of the binaries. They have the BSD versions. Other people run the GNU version of the binaries. Like it's an extremely volatile, extremely uneven kind of environment. Trying to support, like I can see how like it's very hard to support pretty much everyone. Like people will not be able to install the dependencies, or they will have a version of bash which doesn't support a specific syntax, or which is why I was thinking of alternatives. I couldn't find any that really convinced me, but we should keep looking. Because the script we have now runs on our machines. It's a very small sample size. It's like, I don't know, 10 people, and we still have a bunch of ifs, because some people will develop on Macs, some people develop on Linux, and we already have like a few like issues of incompatibilities on a population of like, I don't know, 8 developers. So I cannot imagine releasing this to the public. It's gonna become so complicated.
Markdown makes that better though, right? I mean, like we tell people, well, run these commands. Those commands might not work.
Yeah, I think
the charm of deploy on kind is it like at least is the same thing that we run in development.
Yeah.
Right? So
This is what we were discussing. Yeah.
Like if our solution is we have a markdown and one person runs at one time in one environment before releasing, to me that feels more failure prone.
Yeah, and it is. And again, like literally people on the team get this wrong all the time. So clearly it doesn't work. We tried it and it doesn't work. So clearly we have to ship something else. We could just say, we could just ship deploy on kind and then keep fixing it as people find issues. But I suspect it will slowly become a monster full of if, checks on the version of the kernel, checks on the version of the distribution. So I was like, can we ship a binary instead? Or like, can we ship a Docker image that install that you can run with Docker run and somehow talks to localhost, but not localhost on the container, localhost on the host, and talks to your local kind and does it? Because that eliminates, for example, that could be our own Docker, our own deploy on kind, but at least running in an image that is completely under control, right? Can we do that? I don't know. We even have this, like, I guess, very unusual idea of like, can we ship an image that runs kinds inside so that you just start it and you have a full kind with Korifi all in that image? But that also sounds complicated. It's like Docker in Docker in Docker in Docker. It's like 4 layers of containerization. I don't know if it feels very, very complicated. So I honestly don't know. We should discuss and figure out what's the best way to go and do something. And if we can't find anything better than just ship deploy on kind, let's just ship deploy on kind and see how it goes at least. And maybe it's not that bad, you know, maybe it will already run fine on 99% of machines and we don't have to worry really.
Yeah,
so
I think it might not be that bad. Like if we try as much as possible to leverage, you know, kubectl to do things like secret generation instead of you know, OpenSSH or whatever, or OpenSSL, sorry. I think we've already made some of those.
Yeah, we already have some differences between us in setup, so that's, I guess, led us to some simplification. But yeah, I mean, there's people ship shell scripts. People do ship shell scripts. It is possible. Our one is probably not the most complicated shell script, you know, shipped as a public product. So yeah, it's feasible. So we should at least try. And honestly, even shipping, like, the problem with a Golang binary is that we have to build it for all platforms. Or you can release a Go file as a script and ask people to do Go run, but then people have to install Go, which is not something everyone has installed, while Bash is, or like a shell is probably something that people will have. Again, Docker, maybe. There is a way in Docker to access the host's local host, right? So maybe that's a cool trick. And then you only have to run Docker, which is, I think, not a big ask. Because like if you're running kind, you're already running Docker. So it's a dependency that is already there and you cannot really skip it. So maybe that's how we avoid all the differences. Maybe we can pull that off. I don't know. Because in the end, my reasoning is like kind is going to be on your machine. The problem is you don't just need localhost, right? You need, okay, if you've already created the kind cluster, everything else is just calls to the Kubernetes API, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you can tell Docker to use host networking. And then
right, or something like that.
Right.
Which means like if we ship a Docker image with our script plus kubectl plus any other dependency we need, and we know kind listens on localhost, then that Docker image, you know, can via host network communicate with the local kind, you know, Kubernetes and install Korifi.
Yeah. We're just telling
maybe
people
we could
have
even
to
ship
invoke it with privilege and host networking, which
Yeah, no, there's not just host
nervous.
networking. There is also, so host networking doesn't work on the Mac and Windows. But there is a thing called, there's a thing where like they just give you a domain that is called like docker.local.host or something, which will point to localhost on the machine, on the host machine. It's not as powerful as host network, but that's all we need. If we can just point kubectl to that and do everything via that, it's fine. We just have to tell people, please create your cluster at your discretion, like create your kind cluster as you want, and then make sure you let, I guess, tell us how to reach it. So you have to give us the address or something, and then we can talk to it. But what about authentication though?
I don't know.
See, like there's no perfect way of doing this. Like the stuff keeps coming up, but yeah, we should at least do some experiments and decide.
Cool. That was an interesting discussion. And yeah, I think you correctly found some of the problems. But hopefully the experience is at least decent for most people. And as you said, the instructions are up to date now, which is good. So awesome. I'm gonna try to move this towards a conclusion. I don't see any more topics. So I think we can break and then see each other in 2 weeks. So thanks everyone for your contributions to the meeting. And I look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.